All right, here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome into another episode of the TSF GamePlan show. My name is Safwan Alvi. I will be your host, and I am joined, as always, by TSF writer, contributor, and of course, a friend. His name is Brandon Lampley, and we are TriStateFootball.com. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms on Twitter and Instagram at TS Football. Again, that's at TS Football. You can also follow us on Twitter or like us on Facebook and subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. Just type in TriStateFootball.com and you can listen to our coaches' interviews pregame and postgame anywhere you get your podcast. Just type in TriStateFootball.com and you can look and watch and read Brandon's Best Bets article and the other TriStateFootball.com content. Just go to TriStateFootball.com and you can look at the scoreboard for all the games happening in the Tri-State area at TriStateFootball.com/scores. And Brandon, we are here. It is week 3 of the playoffs. So majority of our teams, their seasons have gone. They have come and gone. It's a fast football season. It is week 3 in the playoffs. It's week 2 over there in Northern Kentucky, and it's actually a week past sectional finals week over there in Indiana. So they're getting ready to play 1 or 2 more games before Thanksgiving weekend. It's state championship weekend over there in Indiana. But we do want to talk about week 3 in the playoffs, Brandon, because we saw a lot of the teams come into action, a lot of the big boys, as we should say, right? Top 4 seeds, Division 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? A lot of the big teams were in action that we didn't see in week 1 of the playoffs. And it did not miss at all, right? We had a lot of really good games. We had some upsets last week, right? We did have some dominating performances as well, right? Some teams making a statement, right? And we'll get into all that as we talk about these games. And I do want to get into our first game right here, a little GMC and GCL South matchup, right? The number, actually, this is Princeton coming in at 9-2, right? They're actually the 4 seed, not number 9 seed. And they are taking on number 1 Elder, who comes into this game undefeated at 11-0. Brandon, we always love seeing a GMC and GCL South matchup. This game, I believe, will be at the Pit, if I'm not mistaken. And again, one of the best places to watch a football game. Elder, the first 11-0 start, I believe, in the history of the program. Their first time ever being 11-0 in the history of the program. And Princeton coming off that really exciting win against Winton Woods. Brandon, they were down 16-3 going into halftime of that game and came back and made some big plays. So tell me about this Princeton and Elder team, right? Conference matchup. We're getting deep in the playoffs. There's going to be a lot of talent on this field.
Well, yeah, Princeton, they should feel very fortunate to be playing another week. As you said, great comeback, great will to win last week against Winton Woods to steal one, frankly. I think majority of people thought that game was over, but, they kept playing and got it done. And I'm going to put Elder on upset alert this week for a couple reasons. And that's because, one, Princeton, they're talented. First off, they have a great coach. They won't be afraid of the moment. They've opened their season with Moeller the last couple years. They're used to competing on that high level. And Elder didn't look fabulous last week against Fairfield. I mean, not a dominating win not that I expected, 27-7 against Fairfield team that struggled a lot on the road. Maybe they called the dogs off. Maybe they didn't show too much, but I kind of expected that one to be a little more of a blowout. But Princeton has athletes: Zion Neal, David Hambrick. I mean, he's a running back. He played a lot of quarterback last week for some reason, threw 2 touchdown passes. They got talent, they got speed, athleticism. And I think, Elder has thrived off their speed and athleticism. And I think, this will be a game, where that's matched up a little bit, Of course, K. Neestep, he can get loose on anybody. Jackson Roof, Tommy Becker. I'm going to stick with Elder for the win, but I wouldn't shock me at all. Princeton pulls it off.
Yeah, and that last week, the Winton Woods versus Princeton game. It was actually on the television when Greg and I were getting ready to go live on that post game show. We were, kind of looking to our left and watching the game. And if you look at the stats, Brandon, of that game, you would think Whitten Woods won the game, just off the stats. But the big one was, I'll say in a minute, it was the penalties. But if you look at the total yards, Whitten Woods 342 to Princeton 124, right? Passing yards, Whitten Woods 287 to Princeton's 154. Get this. Rushing yards, 55 for Whitten Woods, not exactly too impressive, but Princeton had negative 30 rushing yards, negative 30. And you look at the game and you say, how did Princeton win the game, right? The penalties were absolutely astronomical against Whitten Woods. 21 penalties, Brandon, for 152 yards. Yeah. Penalties completely cost them that game, bad timing. They were moving backwards. They where the penalties, were giving Princeton first downs, right? 5 yards, 10 yards, 15 yards, right? And then they were able to capitalize, with big plays, from Zion Neal, David Hambrick. They weren't exactly lighting the world on fire in the game, but the penalties and the discipline took over. They had 1-1 in the turnover battle, right? And Whitten Woods even won the time of possession. So you're looking at this game thinking, how did Whitten Woods not put up 36 and 40 points? And how did, Princeton even put up 10? It's the penalty difference, right? So the more disciplined team wins the game, especially when we're coming into this playoff time.
I agree. And, I just think this is a mental battle. A lot of times when you escape one like that, it's like you got new life. And a lot of times teams take advantage of it. Very tough place to play, very good team against the Elder, but and I'm going to go with them to win, but I think it'll be a close ball game. I think it'll be a lot of points scored too. So I'll take Elder 37-34.
Yeah, that has a chance to be one of the best games of the weekend. And Caden Neestep, as you mentioned, he's one of the co-offensive players of the year in the GCL South. Obviously, he shares that with Matt Ponatoski, who is the reigning Mr. Ohio football. We're going to get to him in just a second. And, Brandon, it's going to be a defensive battle, right? Princeton plays excellent defense. Elder plays excellent defense, right? I think this is the game where Caden Neestep maybe doesn't have a spectacular game, but this Elder defense, it's kind of that, that they've been relying on that defense all year long. And against Fairfield, they kind of knew it was going to be a defensive battle, and they probably didn't have to show much, which I know you were alluding to. But when you have the defense like Elder has, which has propelled them to, an 11-0 matchup, the defense, the turnovers, that type of play on that side of the ball, I think may be the difference in who wins this game.
Absolutely. Absolutely right.
And we are going to stay in the GCL South, Brandon, because the biggest game in the city, biggest game in maybe the entire state of Ohio when it's played, we get to do it again, right? The St. Xavier Bombers, the Moeller Crusaders, right? The game that brings everybody out, right? The two biggest schools in probably Southwest Ohio and one of the biggest schools in the entire state of Ohio. They get to do it again, a rematch of, I believe it was week 7 when St. Xavier took on Moeller, and Moeller did end up winning that game. And Brandon, when we're looking at this game, Moeller has owned St. Xavier over the past handful of years. I was looking at it. Since 2021, St. Xavier has not defeated Moeller, right? 2022, 2023, 2024, and I believe they played twice every single year. So it's 7 consecutive wins for the Crusaders over the Bombers. Tell me about this matchup, right, with St. X. They had a dominating performance against Lakota East, and actually both of these teams beat the Lakotas last week. Moeller was against Lakota West, and St. X was against Lakota East, so they both defeated the Lakota teams. But tell me about this Moeller, team dominating St. X as of late. But, St. X has a really good defense. What are you looking forward to in this really big game in Division I, Region 4?
Well, when they played earlier this year, I said it was a case of offense versus defense. And I'm going to stick with that. The St. X defense is very good. But when you're dealing with Ponatoski, Tyler Jocelyn, their offenses, they're going to score some points anyway. And I just don't feel like the St. X offense will do enough in this type of ball game. I know they put up 40-something on Lakota East. Daniel Ballmer scored 3 touchdowns, and that's a big thing with him playing offense more now. That's a big boost juice back there. Um, I just feel like they're two similar teams in how they play. I just think Moeller's a little better, a little more well-rounded offensively and defensively. And instead of just St. X, really hanging the hat on the defense. Um, I mean, Lakota East went down their first drive or so very quickly and scored. Now I know they shut them out the rest of the way, but that's a little red flaggish for me. You know what I'm saying? Just that they can go down. I'm gonna take Moeller in this one. We know it's gonna be a close game. We know it's gonna be um, a fight, just off of the rivalry, the tradition, the pride of both these programs. Uh, but I think Moeller has the best player in the quarterback, and I think that's what'll pull him through. The game gets tight, and he'll be able to make some big plays, big passes. And I'll take Moeller 21-10.
Yeah, you make a good point with the St. X team. They did put up 42 points, but there's a little bit of context that goes into those 42 points. One of those touchdowns was created by Jax Hendon, right? We had pick six, right? So 7 of those points came from interception, and then one of them came from a Braden Riley 65-yard return, right? So both of those were not offensive related, right? Again, they did score, some offensive touchdowns. They did start to get going. But in that game, Lakota East had as good as a start as you could have had against St. X. Right? You pick off Jackson Fry on the very first possession, right? You make St. X punt again. You score a touchdown at 7-0, right? The first 4 drives, you get a pick and you get a touchdown on the offensive end. It's here we go. And after that, the wheels just completely fell off, right? The pick 6, St. X's offense got a little bit going in the second half. And then you're looking at Moeller, right? They played against Lakota West, which is, you would like to think is better competition, but just a couple weeks ago, Lakota East beat Lakota West pretty badly. So it's hard to really gauge, if we're going to play the transitive property game and the defensive, stars from St. X. Brandon, I think they're going to have to step up. They might need another Jax Hendon pick. They might need a Braden Riley pick. Daniel Vollmer is going to have to play both sides. Kobe Clapper has been playing some fullback, in the red zone, trying to get some blocks. They're superstars, right? Those type of guys, the Clemson commit, Braden Riley, Daniel Vollmer's going to, Vanderbilt, Kobe Clapper's going to Notre Dame. These guys, Brandon, are going to have to step up and make some plays. And not only, just tackles, we're talking forced fumbles, interceptions, right? Because their defense is capable, of holding Moeller if they need to. Jackson Fry needs to take care of the ball. That's number one. But the St. X defense has stars all over it, and they can muck this game up and make plays if they need to.
Yeah, and Aiden Reeder also headed to Michigan, I believe. I think they got to get pressure on the quarterback. You can't just allow him to have a clean pocket and stand back there, or it's just going to be, easy pickings, like my man Greg Shoemaker likes to say. I'm going to go with Moeller, like I said. Close game, physical game. I think they'll just make a couple more plays when it matters most. So I'll take them for the win.
Yeah. When talking about this Moeller offense, they're led by 3 super seniors. You got Landon Adams at wide receiver, Tyler Jocelyn at running back, and then you obviously got Matt Ponatowski, maybe the best quarterback in the state of Ohio, maybe the best football player in the state of Ohio. And Brandon, Tyler Jocelyn, I don't even know if he's a wild card anymore because people are starting to understand about him. He was a wild card maybe 7 weeks ago, but now he's a guy that Moeller's going to rely on, right? Matt Ponatowski gets the credit, but he had 32 rushing attempts last week against Lakota West, and he ran for 166 yards. That's a really good defense over there at Lakota West, right? We know Lakota West had their struggle this year. They weren't maybe as dominant, but that's still a high-quality defense that Tom Bolden put out there week in and week out. And Tyler Jocelyn had 166 yards. So no matter who you go out there, they're going to run the ball, and Ponatowski is going to try to get the ball to Landon Adams. So those 3, will be who the offense runs through, and if they're going to win the game, those guys are going to be the reason for it.
Yeah, the run game, if they can keep their run game going, that's going to be a big factor for them. I personally am one. I was just telling a friend of mine that believes no matter the seeding, I think Moeller's still the best team in the area. Anybody can lose at the pit in a close game. But so I think they have a great chance to get back to the state. Um, but this will be a big game, big game.
Yeah, again, and this game will be played over there at Dayton. It's going to be at Welcome Stadium up at Dayton, right? So it is going to be a neutral site game. And again, that place is going to be packed. That's going to be 10,000 plus people there. That's what Moeller and St. X does. And I agree with you, right? If St. X went on to beat Moeller and Elder, would anybody be surprised? Right? If Moeller went on to beat, X and Elder, would anybody be surprised? Right? That's just how good this GCL stuff is. I completely agree. And speaking of Brandon, we got to clear the board with this conference because it's another inter-conference matchup, right? Talk GMC, GCL South, and we got to bring the big dogs from the ECC into the picture. Talking Division II, Region 8, the LaSalle Lancers coming into this game at 9-3, and the Anderson Raptors coming in undefeated at 11-0. Brandon, one of the most dominant teams in the tri-state area, and we were talking about a GCL South team, and then there's a team over here in Anderson that has talent like they're a GCL South team, right? Offensively, defensively, they've just been excellent. However you want to get beat, whether it's 175 rushing yards or 350 passing yards, they're well coached. They have talent all over the field. But here come the LaSalle Lancers. The only time they've lost this season, right, was the GCL South, right? That was the only 3 games that they've lost, right? And Anderson is that type of a team, right? GCL South. And Anderson may be the heavy favorites, and rightfully so. That's understandable. But Brandon, this LaSalle team they're well coached, right? They play hard, right? They don't beat themselves. I think this is going to be a much better game than people might even think.
Ooh, man.
You don't think so? You think I'm wrong on that?
It's hard for me to agree with that, and this is why. LaSalle, much like Princeton, they should feel fortunate to be in this position. Could have easily lost to Turpin in the first game, went up to Xenia, I believe, and barely skated out of there last week. I mean, I can't see it. You know what I'm saying? And I mean, what was it last week? 10-7 or something like that, 14-10. I mean, they got to get some semblance of offense going if they want a shot. I know they've been playing. I mean, they gave up 27, I think, to Turpin. That's a bad sign, man. In my opinion, that's a bad sign. And then last week, I think, like I said, I think they scored either 14 or 10. I can't remember. 10-7, 10 something like that. Without the impossible happening, it's no way you're holding Anderson in that wave of points, So they're gonna need something special to happen, and some special plays, some Herculean efforts from some players to make some plays offensively, defensively. Woodridge and Portis on defense, to make plays, kind of like you talked about St. X, last week. They're gonna need some pick sixes and some fumble recoveries, things like that, things to turn the tide. Because I mean, we've seen it all year. Anderson, they just a juggernaut, man. They're scoring high points. I know last week Withrow might have been a case of rustiness. Might have been a case like with Elder. Might not have been showing everything once the game was out of hand. But that's probably their lowest points on the year last week, about 29. But I like Anderson big in this one, man. I know LaSalle, a tough schedule, but their recent games, I'm not feeling how those have went for them, So, and
right, I think the door opened. Well, the door opened is weird, as maybe not the best way to say it, but where I think LaSalle, again, if we're taking it from last week, their common opponent was Withrow. Right, LaSalle had a double-digit win against Withrow early in the year, and it was 29-6, which is a convincing win. Right, 29-6 is convincing. But if you look at those numbers, right, Anderson turned the ball over twice. Right, so when you turn the ball over, anything can happen. Right, Withrow won the time of possession battle, but most importantly, Anderson 12 penalties for 110 yards. right? That is how you let other teams stay in games, right? If you're turning the ball over, right, and if you're causing penalties, right? Because Anderson had over 400 yards, right? But they didn't get to 30 points because of the penalties and because of the 2 turnovers. Again, Pat McLaughlin's team, he's been there, done that, right? He's played GCL South teams every single year, right? So the talent level is not going to be anything overwhelming. Again, I love Anderson. I'm not rebuttaling against Anderson right here. I love this team, and I think they have a chance to win state. But if we're looking at LaSalle, they've seen this type of talent, right? Maybe if just as much, if not more, right? So Pat McLaughlin's going to come in. Again, it is an uphill battle, and they're going to have to do something like that again. They're going to have to force a couple turnovers. They're going to have to hope there's some penalties, right? A.V. Carter can't turn the ball over, right? You can't turn the ball over on offense, right? And if you can make that happen, right, I think LaSalle can keep this game close. Again, I'm not saying LaSalle is going to win this game. It's going to be an uphill battle, but I think this game could be closer than many people think because of those things.
Yeah, what I would say, probably a small case of rustiness, missing that week on those penalties. And I just feel like LaSalle, they've seen the talent. I don't think they've seen the scheme, the 5 wides, the just total spread you out, things you haven't seen, screens to the running backs, wide receiver screens.
Yep.
Yeah. It's a lot to, try to take in and handle. And when you play in the GCL South schedule, a lot of physical play. I mean, you just don't see that, and they become masters at this, if you want to call it a spread, air raid, whatever you want to call it. And I just see a little too much, man, a little too much. Could be close. I always say it could be because you never know, but it's going to be tough.
Yeah, again, it is going to be an uphill battle, for the LaSalle Lancers. Hey, Division II Region 8, and I think whoever wins this game has a good chance to make it to state, right? Obviously, we've been saying that about Anderson since week 1. We saw them dominate Cooper, back in week 1, and we're thinking, oh, they might just be just as good, if not better than they were last year, right? And they've obviously kept up to those conversations. All right, Brandon, last game before we get out of here for the night. All right, how about a Division 5 game? Number 3 CHCA taking on number 2 Valley View. Obviously, the seedings in the playoff bracket. CHCA coming in at 10-1, and Valley View coming in also at 10-1. Right, Valley View, for those who don't know, that's just a really good program. They're always in the playoff picture. They're always winning playoff games. CHCA is having one of those really fun and awesome seasons. Brandon, tell me what you're looking for with these 2 matchups. Right, we're talking some Miami Valley Conference with CHCA. Let me know what's on your mind with this game, and who do you think wins?
I like the Eagles, man. I've spoken with Coach Calvin Renfro before. I like what he has going on, and Griffin Richard, he's one of the top players that we never talk about. 6'4", quarterback, great arm, spreads it around, smart. He's also a very, very good basketball player as well. But they got weapons, Wells, Shishang at wide receiver. They love to throw it around, but they still got ability to run a little bit. If I believe last week, one of their backs, had a lot of yards rushing as well. Pedro Guimieres. I'm sorry, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. He had
Pedro Guimieres. Yep, eight attempts for 126 yards, and he had a touchdown.
So they showed that ability, which is scary because, with Wells and Shishang and them wide receivers, they have a pretty potent offense. And, they can, maybe give Taft a run for their money. I think this is Taft's region to lose. But I would love to see them 2 play each other next week if they can both get through. Taft has got Indian Hill, correct? Yeah. So
Taft versus Indian Hill this week, correct?
Yeah, man. I like CHCA in this one.
Yeah, again, my apologies. I think I might have said Division 5. This is actually Division 4, Region 16. Again, my apologies on that. Yeah, CHCA, again, it's a really good team. Valley View's a really good team over there in the Swabble, right? When you beat Wyoming, Brandon, like Valley View did last, week, Wyoming is, again, one of the standards over there in Division 4, Region 16, Coach Hancock and those guys, they've won state championships. They've won a lot of playoff games. So CHCA winning the way they did, Valley View winning the game they did. I think this has a chance to be one of the most interesting games of the weekend, right? Because I think Valley View was going to be favored in this game, and rightfully so because they're really good. But if CHCA, can get that running game going, right, I think it's anybody's game.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm a fan of their offense. I think they can score with anybody. So I'm gonna take the Eagles in this.
And then during that win streak that CHCA is on right now, after that early season loss to Versailles, their offense has been scoring 30 plus points, 40 plus points, right? So when they get going, CHCA is a monster. And real quick, Brandon, before we get out of here, I know it's not on the list, but that Taft and Indian Hill game, right? That is going to be a really, really fun game, Division 4, Region 16, right? Just tell me your thoughts on that because there's going to be talent all over that field.
Yeah, I like Taft, obviously. Like I just mentioned, Indian Hill, the 1 seed, crazy enough. Taft, the 4. A lot of that with the strength of schedule and things of that.
That might be the best 4 seed I've ever seen.
Yeah, the points. I think it's going to be an uphill battle for Indian Hill. They gotta. If I'm Coach Rodenberg, Devlin Daniel, you might get 40 carries tomorrow. Friday, if possible. Like, I got to keep the ball in his hands. I got to try to shorten the game.
He may not come off the field all game. He might play offense and defense every single snap.
I got to try to shorten the game because that Tab offense, man, they are explosive. Manzana Torbert, Lorenzo McMullen, who just received the offer from Oregon this past week. And they got several more receivers as well that are lights out. And I think they're on a mission. That loss last year in the Final Four, they've been playing like, that's stuck with them this whole season. It's not good enough to just win. They've been trying to annihilate teams, and they have annihilated teams. And if you recall, they had a lead in that semifinal game and gave it up. And I think that's part of that mindset. Like, we're not going to do that again. We're going to put teams away. So I think Tav gets through this one, and I think they got a good chance. That Indian Lake or Indian Valley team is still back again. We could see depending on how they do we could see a rematch up there, and I would like to see that. So
yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of good games again this weekend, right? This is the best time of the year, Brandon, right? We're talking second and third rounds of the playoffs. And before we get out of here, any final thoughts on the playoffs, right? We got a lot of good games, just overall thoughts, anything on your mind before we get out of here?
Well, I'm debating Rams. I'm interested in their quest back to prominence. They didn't fall off, but
trying to get back to a state championship game like they did a couple years ago.
I believe McNicholas is still around. That's who beat them in week 10. And they could meet again. And that'd be a heck of a game to see what would happen in that regional final. McNick and Baden, only team to beat them. So I'm looking into that Division 3 a little bit as well, just to got my eye on it as I'm focusing on this other stuff, but I got my eye on Division 3.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, a lot of games, a lot of fun. It's going to be very interesting to see how these games go out. Right, the playoffs are rocking and rolling. So that's going to do it for us. We appreciate everyone for watching. We appreciate everyone listening. For Brandon Lampley, I'm Safwan Alvi. Again, we appreciate you, and thank you so much for listening to the TSF GamePlan Show.